Christian Theater of the Imagination proudly presents Extreme Gravity, the new radio play written by J.D. Evans Jr., starring Elvis D. Tripp and his traveling troupe of strange voices, and featuring the musical styling of Milford Whittle and his finger puppet marching band. But soon, Monday, silly announcements by Warple the Potato. We continue with Chapter 3, The Stone Castle. Bakra and Suzanne walked into the courtyard of the stone castle, accompanied by two protectors who had dimmed and changed their color to a pale blue. The courtyard did not have any internal lighting, so the only sources of light were the three moons, the largest of which was light purple and actually was a twin planet, the two protectors, and the stars twinkling in the night sky. The nearest reflection pool was circular and located at the bottom of a series of concentrically descending wide steps. The water in the reflection pool looked more like velvet black oil than water. The moonlight highlighted the edges of the steps leading down to the reflection pool, and the shimmering images of the stars made the surface of the reflection pool look like a slightly out of focus astronomical map. When Bakra and Suzanne stopped at the edge of the top step leading down to the reflection pool, one of the protectors spiraled down to the lowest step, flew into and out of the velvet black, oily surface, blinked a series of red lights, and returned to Bakra and Suzanne, who took this as a warning not to explore the reflection pool anymore. Suzanne looked at Bakra and whispered above the low-pitched humming noise that seemed to surround the courtyard.
If you look closely, you can see a path worn to the courtyard floor. Let's follow it.
Not having anything to say, Bakra extended his arm in the direction of the path, indicating that since this was Suzanne's idea, he would follow her. Suzanne smiled and started walking toward the path, and Bakra followed. They reached the path in a few steps, and Bakra noticed that although the path appeared to be made of the same shiny black marble as the rest of the courtyard floor, its surface was more like a smooth polish than a shine. At the same time, it occurred to him that whatever had created this path probably did not wear metal shoes. Other thoughts were going through his mind, so he was having to make an effort to remain focused on what he was doing, which was difficult since he realized that he really didn't know what he was doing other than following Suzanne and trying to be alert to any danger that might be present. After walking along the path for a few minutes, Bakra and Suzanne came to one of the small tower structures and stopped about 20 feet away from the small door at the base of the tower. Thinking this was a good time for a question, Bakra looked at Suzanne and asked, "What's inside the tower?"
Nothing really. The tower is a staircase that leads to the area below the courtyard, and that's where we're going. I want to show you something, remember?
Bakra nodded that he remembered, and Suzanne led the way to the tower entrance. When they were inside the tower, the protectors increased their luminance and lit the tower staircase with a brighter but still pale blue light. The staircase was about 15 feet in diameter, and the steps descended gradually toward a hint of pitch black darkness. Except for a solid black border at the bottom of the wall, the inside wall of the tower was made of dark gray, smoothly porous stone. Instead of a handrail, there was a protruding strip of black stone that followed the stairs downward along the tower wall, and a black stone cylinder, also with a protruded strip that filled what otherwise would have been the empty center of the staircase. There was no apparent writing on the walls of the tower in the entrance area, but Bakra noticed some simple geometric symbols located above and below the protruded strip of black stone at 5 depth intervals. Bakra and Suzanne began walking down the stairs, accompanied by the protectors who had automatically positioned themselves so that one was in front and one was in back. There were no doors or exit corridors in what appeared to be the logical place for a first level below the courtyard. So Bakra and Suzanne continued their descent towards whatever awaited them below the courtyard. After descending to a level that was about 50 feet below the courtyard, Bacher asked Suzanne how much farther they had to go to be somewhere, while thinking to himself that although they were somewhere, they were more transitionally somewhere than actually somewhere. Suzanne replied to his question with a soft,
"Shh. Listen to the humming, Bacher."
In fact, the low-pitched humming noise was growing louder, and as they descended below the courtyard, the humming noise continued to grow louder. Bacher, who had been concentrating on directing his focus to whatever it was they were doing, found himself trying to imagine the source of the low-pitched humming noise that was becoming a little louder with each descending step. Bacher thought to himself, what would make that kind of noise? Several sources came to mind, including big machines, big engines, a cathedral-sized pipe organ with a stuck bass pedal, a big sound system with a grounding problem, a not-so-distant idling jet plane, and a few other items, all of which were definitely big. While it was a little disturbing to be descending a tower staircase that led toward an increasingly louder, low-pitched humming noise that had to originate from something big below the courtyard of a stone castle in another world that appeared to be populated by animated lights that acted as though they were sentient or at least well-trained, Bacher found a great deal of comfort in the knowledge that the humming noise was constant in pitch. It seemed to him that so long as the pitch or frequency of the hum remained constant, it was a good indication that whatever was creating it was staying in one place and had not noticed, or did not care to notice, that he and Suzanne were getting closer to it. Bacher remembered that Suzanne had said she had been here before, and although not quite consciously, he noticed the protectors did not appear to be very concerned with anything other than providing an adequate amount of pale blue light to illuminate the descending staircase. In about the amount of time that had elapsed since Bacher began and ended his latest interlude of thought, the leading protector changed its color from pale blue to orange and zoomed down the descending stairs. Bacher and Suzanne stopped and noticed that the orange glow left at the end of the stairs changed to yellow, then to bright white, and quickly back to orange, followed by the zooming return of the now orange-colored protector. This impromptu scouting trip and change of color performed by the forward protector occurred so quickly that it appeared to be almost what you would see if you fired a silently exploding skyrocket with an orange exhaust plume down an unlit staircase, and then somehow reverse time back to the point at which you originally fired the skyrocket. Bacher and Suzanne interpreted it as a good, albeit somewhat startling sign, and resumed walking down the stairs. In a few minutes, they reached the last stair, stood at the bottom of the tower staircase, and looked into a small corridor that ended in an opening that appeared to lead into a pitch-black room of undetermined size. Once again, Bacher turned to Suzanne and asked, "What happens now?"
We walk into the corridor, and then we go into a big room.
What's in the big room?
You'll be surprised, Bacher.
I know, and I guess you aren't going to tell me what is going to surprise me. So we might as well continue walking, Suzanne. And so, with a little grin on her face and an obvious look of being determined not to be surprised on his face, Bacher and Suzanne left the bottom of the tower staircase and walked into the small corridor. At the same time, the lead protector zoomed ahead about 20 feet, illuminating the corridor with its orange afterglow, changed its color to yellow, and zoomed forward about 1,000 feet, and then visually exploded into a very bright white light that hovered about a mile above what could only be described as an advanced technology city with no apparently present inhabitants. Bacher, who was obviously surprised, in spite of his efforts not to be, looked ahead at the ceiling of this enormous city space and found the source of the low-pitched humming noise, a big fan that appeared to serve as the air cleansing and circulating system for the city. The fact that he could see the big fan from the inside of the corridor meant that the corridor was very close to the ceiling and that the ceiling was flat or very slightly curved. Although it was far away, he could see the opposite side of the ceiling wall and guessed it was several miles away. It looked like there was a ledge about 100 feet wide that extended from the ceiling wall on both the far opposite side and immediately in front of the corridor. At the edge of the ledge, the shiny black marble gradually sloped downwards until it reached the ground level of the city, which created the effect of a city at the bottom of a giant Chinese wok. Bakra and Suzanne walked through the corridor onto the ceiling ledge and stopped to look around the dome ceiling. To their far right, they saw a long set of vents running across the ceiling wall. To their far left, they saw that the ceiling wall was open to the outside, continuing down to about 200 feet above the ground level of the city. This opening to the outside was probably cut through the other side of the mountains that were behind the stone castle. All the side walls leading from the ceiling ledge to the city were gradually sloped, leading Bakra to think that it would be very difficult to fall quickly unless you happened to be round and started to roll. The far left opening to the outside was made of the same shiny black marble as the ceiling ledge floor, but was edged with a faintly glowing light strip, which contributed to the overall effect that made the opening look like a giant framed picture of the outside world. Although the air supply fan was making a noticeably loud noise, there was no breeze, and this helped create the impression that the opening to the outside was more of a perfectly clear picture of the outside than an actual opening. Giving this more thought, Bakra realized that instead of a picture of the outside, this could be a permanent world window, like the one that Drost made when Suzanne activated it with a laser pen. In fact, the Drost from the asteroid could be the fragmented remains of a world window that had been located on the asteroid but had been either broken or destroyed a long time ago. I think I understand why you brought me here. We need to return to the ship immediately. Still grinning, Suzanne said,
I thought this would be your reaction. Saber can use this. But first, we need to know more about it and how to control it. When we come back here, we will return to this location automatically, which appears to be a property of the Drost that cannot be changed by the laser pen. I'm ready when you are, Bakra.
Bakra put his arms around Suzanne and said, Ready? Suzanne shone the laser pen on the Drost she was now holding, and they were back in the ship after taking one step forward. Just as Suzanne had predicted, Psi was nearly finished setting up its macros when Bakra and Suzanne reappeared inside the ship. While this was occurring, the two protectors, who had zoomed across the valley and over the mountains after observing a shooting star streak across the night sky of another world, were watching as new visitors prepared to emerge from a sinister-looking spaceship. These protectors, who like their brothers and sisters, were not programmed to engage in unnecessary, random, or contemplative thought, were sending a general alarm signal back to the stone castle, where the other protectors were rapidly searching through old records to find any data that related to the new visitors or their sinister-looking spaceship. The protectors' programming indicated that detecting the presence of visitors arriving in this type of spaceship was a cause for immediate alarm, but did not indicate precisely why. Apparently, they who came before had not had enough time to provide the protectors with reasons for everything before they abandoned the city. They who came before added intelligence, security, and override capabilities to the protectors' programming, knowing not only that the protectors would be a constant link to the abandoned city, but also that the protectors would be the only possible resistance force they could leave to face those who follow, until they could safely return, an event those will predictably attempt to keep unanticipated.
We will always tolerate this as a necessary interaction between the apparent past and the virtual future, and choose to concentrate on our perpetual present, as we who always are, always good, knowing that nothing has happened for such a long time that we almost recognize this new activity as a harming, traveling incognito before we are permanently distracted by something else, anything else, that appears to be interesting.
ends the third chapter of Extreme Gravity, The Stone Castle. Stay tuned for the next chapter. The Company Man arrives on the asteroid. This has been brought to you by the fabulously fabulous, marvelously marvelous, wonderfully wonderful science fiction theater